all your school rugby, all in one place. This is NextGenXV.
Alright guys, welcome to NextGenXV. So we continue our series looking at the best young prospects in the world, and as you have seen in previous series, we looked at the South African under 18 age group and the English under 18 age group. This time we move on to the under 20 age group, and we are going to be looking at it from an international perspective. So if you take a look at our website on Monday, you would have seen the PAX 100 for the under 20 global players. And from that list, we've determined what our top 15 would be, which is this video, of course. And then on Friday, we'll be naming our number one prospect internationally for the under 20 age group. So if you are new to the channel, please don't forget to click that subscribe button as well as bell notification. And as soon as new videos are released, you'll be the first to know. So just in terms of the list, don't forget that we are looking at this alphabetically. So there is no particular ranking order from 1st to 15th. This is purely just done alphabetically. And without further ado, let's get into the list of players. First up on the list, we have Charlie Atkinson from England. So the 182 centimeter, 88 kilogram fly-half currently plays for Wasps. He's already made his senior debut, acquitted himself very well. He did make our bench for last year's World Schools team for 2020, which shows you how highly we rate him. We've spoken about him a heck of a lot on this channel. He's a left-footed player, absolutely awesome boot, ability to open up space, very, very exciting prospect. You can see his highlights reel on our channel if you want. But yeah, I mean, we've spoken about him a heck of a lot, and no doubt he would have set the scene alight at the Under-20 World Cup this year. We still don't know 100% of the tournament will occur, but if it does, definitely count Charlie in as a starter for England. Very, very exciting player, and there's a lot of competition in the fly-half position in England, just to show you how special this young talent is, and definitely big things awaiting him in the near future. Next up, we have another highly rated English prospect, and that's Finn Baxter. Currently weighing at 115 kgs and 182 centimeters in height, and he plays for Harlequins. So he was a stalwart at Wellington College. We did rank them the number one rugby school in the UK last year, and he was a big part of that. Very, very powerful scrummager, very mobile, modern day prop, very, very exciting prospect. Remember seeing him play for England under 18, and he really accounted himself well, showed a heck of a lot of leadership ability as well. So Finn is definitely someone that's going to come through the system very solidly. In fact, he's already made his senior debut, and this is a teenager as a front ranker, guys. Not very often you see props making their debut while still a teenager. So you can really see what a special player he is and how highly rated he is within the English system. And no doubt it won't be long before a player of this caliber is going to be playing senior rugby. And it would have been a very, very interesting tussle between him and the other front rankers at the Under-20 World Cup this year. Definitely got a bright future in the game, Finn Baxter. Next up, we have a very exciting prospect from New Zealand, and that is Cam Church. Weighing at 86 kgs and 187 centimeters in height. He's a flank and currently signed to Auckland. So Cam is definitely someone that's got a very bright future in the game. He was actually the captain for St. Kitts and led them to a national co-ed title in 2019. A more hard-working flanker you won't really see. And he's definitely someone that excels not only in rugby but as an all-round athlete. He did compete to a national level in both swimming and rowing. So he was selected for New Zealand schools in 2019, and he acquitted himself very well. He was actually awarded the Jerry Collins Memorial Bronze Boot. And basically what this is that each year a player from both New Zealand and Australian teams are presented the award for being the most constructive player in the series when New Zealand schools play as Australia schools. So you can see this is a player that is very, very highly rated, and just a tremendous overall athlete. And as we know, New Zealand produce quality loose forwards year after year, world-class loose forwards, and there's no doubt that Cam definitely has got the ability to become one of those great players. Definitely looking forward to seeing how he develops in New Zealand rugby. Next up, we have our first South African on the list, and it's George CRONJE. Currently 192 centimeters in height, 102 kgs, and he plays as a loose forward. Very good at the lock position as well. So He's currently signed to the Cheetahs. He did go off to play in France for a while, but then he decided to come back to the Cheetahs, where he felt that he could develop further. And already he's playing senior rugby and has acquitted himself very well. He was an absolute superstar for Grey College at school level. Played great rugby for South African schools as well. Tremendous leader on the field and off the field as well. Has the respect of all of his peers. And his development has definitely been fast-tracked by going to the Cheetahs. And no doubt would have been a very, very exciting player for the South African Baby Boks at this year's Under-20 tournament. And someone with a very, very bright future in the game, and someone that's been highly rated by many in the country from a very, very young age. So definitely expect to hear a lot more about George Cronje in the future. Up next, we have a Scottish youngster, Jamie Dobie, currently playing his rugby at Glasgow Warriors, standing in at 1 meter and 75 centimeters, weighing in at 74 kilograms. The young scrum half has been talked about as the future of Scottish rugby. So he attended Merchiston Castle School. He's an absolute superstar. He actually led them to a Scottish Schools Cup final at Murrayfield when they beat Dollar Academy in the final. And he was actually awarded the most exciting prospect at the 2018 Offline End of Year Awards, and was courted by a number of English clubs, but he decided to dedicate his future to the Glasgow Warriors. He's already made 5 appearances despite being only 19 years of age. He'll be turning 20 this year, of course, on the 7th of June. And yeah, guys, just excellent distribution, all-round play is fantastic, and a very, very exciting player. I mean, in terms of Scottish rugby, this is a generational talent, guys. Someone that's definitely going to be leading them to perhaps a new great era for Scottish rugby. Obviously, it's been hard for them in the last couple of years, but they do have some exciting prospects coming through, and Jamie's definitely at the top of that list. And wait until you see him play, then you'll really appreciate how great a talent he is. And yeah, there's a lot more exciting prospects coming out of Merchiston Castle School at the moment, so keep an eye on that team as well. So next up on our list, we have LLOYD from Wales, our first Welshman on the list. And what a prospect this guy is. Can play any position in the back line almost. And currently playing for the Bristol Bears, where he's acquitted himself very, very well. Making 22 appearances so far, despite only being 19 years of age, scoring 58 points in the process. And guys, one of the first players on this list that's under 20 that's actually made his international debut. So he's got 2 caps for Wales. And if you take a look at Welsh rugby in general, I think there's a golden generation coming with a lot of talented youngsters, and Joan's definitely one of those youngsters that's going to be bringing Welsh rugby forward in the future. I know a lot of guys are talking about the future of French rugby with all their young talent, but don't sleep on the Welsh. I think there's a golden generation coming, and who knows, the Welsh team of this decade could become similar to the Welsh team of the 1970s that were just absolutely fantastic. So definitely looking forward to seeing him play more in the future, and definitely become a key player for Bristol and become a stalwart for them over the next decade, no doubt about it. Up next, we have our first and only Argentinian on this list, and a player that personally I think is one of the most gifted loose forwards in the world in terms of junior rugby, and that's JOAQUIN Oviedo. A giant for his age, 191 centimeters tall, 113 kilograms. He's an 8th man, and he currently plays for Los Saibos in Argentina. And the first time I saw him play was when Argentina under 18 came to South Africa in 2019, and he accounted for himself exceptionally well, scored a couple of tries during the tournament. Support play was awesome, and just very, very powerful, and a wisdom beyond his years. Great reading of the game, someone that I can't speak highly enough about. And the thing is, the Argentinian senior rugby coach Ledesma pretty much agrees, because JOAQUIN has just recently been included in the Argentinian men's rugby squad. So in no time, definitely expect him to be making his senior debut for Argentina, and he will definitely become a household name in the next couple of years. There's absolutely no doubt about it. He's definitely got a pathway, very clear pathway to make his Argentina debut, and definitely could become a very, very important player for them over the next decade. Next up from Australia, we have REESJAN PASITOA, and a key player for St. Joseph's College Naji in the GPS tournament. Absolute star, schoolboy level, absolutely decimated his opposition, and basically a player that very many rugby league clubs were after, many union clubs were after, highly sought after, and unlike the majority of Australian youngsters, he actually chose to stay in rugby union, which was fantastic. If it wasn't for the delay in the Super Rugby season last year because of COVID, one feels that he would have been given a bit more of a run on. 185 centimeters and 96 kilograms at only 19 years of age just goes to show that he's got a tremendous size for his age, so he can still develop the physical side of his game, certainly. But a very, very skillful fly-off, and he's already made his debut for the Brumbies, and no doubt in the future he's going to have an important part to play for Australian rugby as they look to bounce back from a very disappointing last decade of rugby. Up next, we have another Welsh talent. They call him Rhys Lightning, and for very good reason. This kid's got a tremendous amount of pace. Louis Rhys-Zammit, currently standing at 191 centimeters and 87 kgs. He started off his rugby career, and the first time we really noticed him was when he attended Hartbury College, where he was an absolute superstar. And then went straight into the Gloucester system, where he acquitted himself very, very well. He's already scored 15 tries in 23 appearances for Gloucester, which just goes to show his strike rate, and very, very exciting future ahead of him. And no doubt he's going to be eyeing Shane Williams' try scoring record for the Welsh. And with this amount of talent, you wouldn't bet against it happening. Next up, we have a very, very interesting player with a very interesting story, and that's Anton SEGNER. So Anton was born in Frankfurt, Germany in 2001. And prior to 2017, he was playing for SC 1880 Frankfurt, and he quickly established himself as one of the best players in the youth system, won numerous German youth championships, captained his team, one of the brightest prospects in Germany, actually even made the German under-16 national team in 2016, and that is a 15-year-old. Didn't play for the under-18 team, though, because he actually chose to go to New Zealand. So what happened was that SEGNER was on a 6-month stay in New Zealand. This was back in 2017, where he was an exchange student, and then he was offered a scholarship by Nelson College down in the South Island, and he ended up playing first team then. Then in 2019, he went on to captain the Nelson College team and led them to their first ever UC championship. Well, not first ever, but their first in 12 years. And in 2018, he made the Crusaders under-18 squad. Obviously, in 2019 as well, was also part of the New Zealand under-18 schoolboy team. In fact, in 2018, at 16 years of age, he actually made his debut against Tonga. So very, very exciting prospect, and definitely would have probably been part of the Junior All Blacks mix last year if there had been a tournament. And just to go to show how highly rated he is, he's already made the step up in terms of pro rugby. He was named in the 2020 Tasman squad for the Mitre 10 Cup, and so far he's made 5 appearances for them. And he became the first German to win a Mitre 10 title when they won the 2020 Mitre 10 Cup, when they beat Auckland in the final at Eden Park. And he actually came off the bench in the second half for that game. So it's very exciting to see a player from a country that's not a traditional rugby country make the step up like this. And who knows, one day he could become an All Black, and would obviously be the first ever German-born All Black, which would just be very exciting. But let's hope we see more Antons come through the system in Germany, and Germany can become a big player in terms of rugby. That would just be fantastic to see. So I'm very excited about his future career, and just absolutely fascinating in terms of how he came up in the game. A very unusual story, and a fantastic story as well. Next up on the list, a player we've spoken about a lot, another player that we've spoken about a lot, CARWYN TUIPULOTU, was an absolute stalwart at Sedberg School, someone that we've been watching very closely for a long time, and for good reason. I mean, if you take a look at the future of Welsh rugby, it's looking fantastic, like we said earlier. The backline's looking outstanding. There are some players in the forwards that are definitely looking like they could make the step up. But in terms of sheer talent and sheer ability, there is no one close to CARWYN in terms of overall playing ability. The last time you saw a Welsh 8th man of this size and this much talent was actually Colin Travis. And what's frightening is that CARWYN's basically the same size, or actually just a little bigger than Colin was at his peak. And he's only 20. So you can imagine what's going to happen in a few years when he develops even more. He's just going to become an outstanding player. He's already got all the talent there is. He's already got the work rate. He's got the humility. Doesn't let all the press get to his head. And that says a lot. And I think it helps that he comes from a very well-known rugby family and rugby background. And doing very well for Ospreys. Already made his debut for them as a teenager. And I think if the under-20 tournament happens this year, this is someone that's definitely going to be a standout player, and very excited to see him in the future. And someone that's definitely going to be a player to keep you out on for the future. Up next, a player that since this channel started we've been speaking about very highly, and for good reason. It's HENCO van Wyk from South Africa, and just a very, very special player. Very special player. Now, a lot of guys talk about his size. He's 181 centimeters and 88 kgs as a center, not the biggest. When you got this guy's ability, size really doesn't matter. I know it's an overused term that size doesn't matter, but in terms of instinctive playing, there's nobody in the under 20 age group in the world that can play just off instinct like HENCO can. His ability to find that gap in his spatial awareness is way ahead of his years. Way ahead of his years. He can make something happen out of nothing. You just need to go online, go onto Raw Rugby and take a look at the highlights reels of HENCO van Wyk. He's an absolutely devastating player, and someone that we know is going to go far in the game. He went to school at Monument, where he was outstanding, from a young age, went through all the age group levels. And Monument have a habit of producing outstanding centres. I mean, they've produced Rock-Free, for example, the Springbok centre. And in terms of the last decade of South African schools rugby, there aren't many players that have been better than HENCO. He's a very, very special player. And one just hopes that the system brings him through and brings his talent through, and just lets him play off that instinct. Don't coach that instinct out of him. Let him play off that instinct, because really, I mean, the guy's ability to make something happen out of nothing is just magical. And if he continues on the path, 100% he'll become a Springbok. He's just got that ability, and he's a humble guy. So speaking up is not going to change the way he trains and the way he dedicates himself to the game. I can't speak highly enough about this young player, and really looking forward to seeing him develop over the next couple of years. He's going to be a name on everyone's lips in the next couple of years, mark my words. Next up, another player with a very interesting story. We have Stephen Varney. So Varney was born in Wales and currently plays for Gloucester in the Premier League. Went to Hartbury College, but actually through his mother managed to qualify for Italy. So he made his Italian under-20 debut in 2020, scored 1 try and 2 appearances, and then dedicated himself to Italy. So he made his national debut for the men's team, his national debut in 2020, same year, and he's made 2 appearances for them so far. And like mentioned, he's currently playing for Gloucester, 7 appearances and 4 tries, shows a high strike rate. Very, very bright prospect in terms of the scrum half position. No doubt Wales will be kicking themselves for not trying to secure this youngster's allegiance earlier, but I think Italy will benefit in the future. And with Italy having more quality international rugby players playing for the team, only benefits world rugby. And we'll see in a couple of years if he's made the right decision. But whatever happens, very exciting player with a very exciting future, and another top talent off the Hartbury production line. Up next, a big boy that needs no introduction. That is JAN-HENDRIK Wessels, 190 centimeters, 120 kgs, despite being 19 years of age. Playing as a prop, well documented that he went from playing in France, where they rated him extremely highly, but decided to come back to the Bulls, where Jake White desperately wanted him to be part of his future plans. Drake has already alluded to JAN-HENDRIK being the future Oyster Runt, and it's very hard to argue against that. All you need to do is look at the highlights reel we did on this channel that went viral of JAN-HENDRIK, and went viral for good reason. This guy is an incredibly talented player, loves to run with the ball, loves to get physical, loves the contact. An old school South African prop with a modern edge. That's the best way that he can be described, in my opinion. And someone that's going to develop very well, one feels, under Jake White. He has been thrown in the deep end a few times. For example, being played at tight head instead of loose head in a recent game where he had some difficulties. But I think the thing with Jake is that he wants to throw the youngster in the deep end and challenge him and see if he can come out on top. And that's just going to bode well for the future for JAN-HENDRIK. He's under a coach that believes in him and was one of the best coaches in the world. So there's no doubt that He's got everything around him in terms of support structure, especially with Wessel du Plessis being his junior coach, and like mentioned, Jake White, his senior coach. They believe in him. They've done everything they can to bring him back to the country. So ultimately, he's in the right environment to flourish, and no doubt, based on raw talent alone, he has that ability to flourish. And who knows how long it could be until we see him in a Springbok jersey. And no doubt, an under-20 World Cup tournament takes his place. You're looking at a player that could no doubt be in the team of the tournament. Last, but definitely not least, we have KADE WOLHUTER from South Africa, currently playing for Western Province in the fly-off position, weighing in at 85 kilograms and standing at 182 centimeters tall. KADE's story is well documented. He went from Montpellier and re-signed to Western Province last year. And it's an interesting story with him as well, because basically he was looking for a commitment from a South African union or SARU itself. None was forthcoming, so he decided to move to France to play some rugby there. Then obviously the COVID situation hit, and he returned to South Africa. So, publicly stating that he was going to go play in France cost him a place in the South African schools team. Which is very unfortunate. He was one of the best fly-offs, if not the best fly-off in the country in 2019. And it was sad for him that he couldn't be selected to SA schools, particularly after he had such a fantastic Craven Week tournament. And what is even more impressive with KADE was when he came back to South Africa and he played in the green versus gold game. He was playing against seasoned professionals, and he just took to that team and took to the field and was absolutely outstanding. He belonged there, felt no pressure. And way ahead in his years in terms of his development. He's such a talented player. When it comes to kicking accuracy and kicking ability in his age group, I don't think there's anybody that can come close. I think by far the best in world rugby in terms of under 20 level. If there is someone out there that you guys can think of, would love to hear about him, but I just can't see it. KADE is absolutely outstanding in that field, and his general play as well, the confidence it took to do a cross kick and let that lead to a try assist, for example, just goes to show you that he's not intimidated by the big stage. In fact, he relishes the big stage. And in terms of an under-20 World Cup, I think he would have relished that big stage as well, and he would have no doubt been one of the players of the tournament. Can't do justice in terms of how much talent this kid has, and he works really hard at his game. And one just needs to look at his highlights reels just to see, how many hours he puts into the, into practice, especially in his kicking game and his game overall. Just an outstanding player, and someone that we're so happy is back in South Africa, because if he had stayed in France for a couple more years, no doubt he would have been a French international. Now he's got the ability to become a South African international, and we're looking forward to that day.